This is the story of a poor woman named Hannah and a billionaire named Dominic. One was cold, hungry, and alone. The other had everything money could buy. But one rainy morning in Lagos, their worlds collided in a way no one could have predicted. And what happened next will touch your heart. It was a cold morning. Rain fell gently but steadily across the city. Cars rushed past on the busy road, their tires splashing against puddles. Commuters hurried by, umbrellas raised, collars up, trying to escape the chill. But at the corner of the street, Hannah stood still. She clutched her baby, Julia, to her chest. The child was wrapped in a thin cloth, soaked, trembling, and softly crying. Hannah's own clothes were soaked through. Her slippers were torn. Her skin was cold. Her hands shook. She had no umbrella, no food, no home. But she would not move. Last night, there had been nothing to eat, not even a spoon of food. Her stomach had stopped growling hours ago, but Julia's soft whimpers pierced through her like knives. So this morning, even in the rain, Hannah stood by the roadside, not begging for herself, but for her child. Her only hope was that anyone might stop and offer help. People passed by. Some glanced at her with pity. Others looked away. Two men nearby whispered, "Why is she standing in the rain like that?" "Maybe it's her job," the other replied. "Some people fake it for money. I heard they even rent babies to beg." Hannah heard them, but she said nothing. She just wiped Julia's face with the corner of her dress and rocked her gently. Her voice was soft, tired, but full of pain. "Please, just a little food for my baby. She hasn't eaten." She looked down at Julia. The baby's lips were dry. Her crying had weakened to almost nothing. Hannah held her tighter. "Don't worry, my baby. Mommy will find food today. Even if I have to stand here all day, help will come." What she didn't know was that help was already watching her. Inside a sleek black Jeep, stuck in Lagos traffic, a man sat in the back seat. His name was Dominic, a billionaire, the kind of man who wore silence like a suit, who made heads turn when he entered a room. This morning, he was on his way to a critical meeting with foreign investors. It was the kind of deal that could take his company to new heights. But as the car crawled forward, Dominic leaned back and glanced out the window. And then he saw her, a woman standing in the rain, holding a child. Still, suited, silent, something about her made him sit up. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't knocking on windows or chasing cars. She was just there, exhausted, cold, like the child in her arms was the only thing keeping her standing. Dominic's eyes stayed locked on her. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But in that moment, he knew one thing. This wasn't just a beggar. This was a mother, and she was breaking. Hannah's voice was barely louder than the rain as she asked for help. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't chasing cars, just standing, gently rocking her baby. Her eyes pleading. Inside the black SUV, Dominic felt something shift inside him. This wasn't ordinary. This wasn't a scam. This was pain. Real pain. A mother, soaked in rain, holding a crying baby like it was her last reason to keep breathing. He looked again, then made a decision. "Stop the car," Dominic said. The driver glanced back. "Sir, just stop." The SUV pulled over. Dominic opened the door and stepped out into the rain. The cold hit him immediately, soaking through his suit, but he didn't care. His polished shoes splashed into the wet road as he walked slowly toward the woman. Hannah didn't notice him at first. She was busy rocking Julia, whispering soft words of comfort. The baby cried, weak and tired. Dominic stopped in front of her. She looked up, startled. A tall man in a drenched suit was standing just inches away. She didn't know what to say. "Good morning," Dominic said, voice calm and gentle. Hannah only nodded. He looked at the baby in her arms. "What's her name?" "Julia," she replied softly. He stepped a little closer and glanced at Julia's trembling lips, her eyes half closed, her little chest rising and falling too fast. "Has she eaten?" he asked. Hannah shook her head. "No, sir. Not since yesterday." He looked down at Hannah's shivering hands. "And you?" She looked away. "No, sir. But it's okay. I just want to feed my baby." Dominic paused, taking it all in the soaked clothes, the way she held the child like nothing else in the world mattered. Then he said, "Come with me." Hannah's eyes widened. "Sir, let me help you." She hesitated. She had never spoken to someone like him before. She didn't know what to think, but when she looked into his eyes, they were calm, kind, safe. She looked at Julia. The baby was still trembling. Hannah took a deep breath and nodded. They walked to the SUV. The driver opened the door, his face full of silent questions. Hannah stepped in, still clutching Julia tightly, and sat carefully at the edge of the seat, too afraid to touch anything. Dominic got in beside her. The The car started moving. Neither of them spoke at first. Dominic picked up a small towel from the seat and handed it to her. "Here," he said. "Dry the baby." "Thank you, sir," she whispered, wrapping Julia gently. Her hands still trembling, Dominic watched her. Her dress was dripping. Her hair clung to her face, but she didn't complain. All her focus was on her child. "What's your name?" he asked. "Hannah." "Where's your home?" She lowered her eyes. "We sleep on the street?" He didn't react. He just nodded quietly. "Okay, I'm taking you somewhere safe." Hannah's eyes widened. "Really, sir?" "Yes. Somewhere dry and warm. You both need rest. And food." Tears filled her eyes, but she quickly wiped them. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." Dominic said nothing. He turned toward the window, deep in thought. The car rolled forward through traffic. The rain hadn't stopped. The city kept moving. Dominic glanced at his watch. The investors were likely already at his office, waiting. But for the first time in years, he didn't care. And Hannah didn't know it yet, but this was the moment everything was about to change. Dominic's meeting was important, one that could lead to major growth for his company. Investors were likely already waiting at his office, but he looked at Hannah, at Julia, cold, tired, hungry. He shook his head. "No," he whispered to himself. "They need food first." He leaned forward. "Stop at that restaurant," he told the driver. The car pulled up at a small roadside eatery. Dominic stepped out and held the door. He didn't care who saw him. He didn't care what people thought. Inside, he ordered hot rice, fried plantain, grilled chicken, warm milk for the baby, and water. Hannah sat quietly at the edge of the wooden chair, still holding Julia close. Her stomach turned with hunger she hadn't eaten in 2 days. When the food arrived, she looked at Dominic, unsure. "Can I eat here, sir?" she asked gently. Dominic nodded. "Yes, eat." Hannah bowed her head in gratitude. She placed Julia on her lap and gently fed her the warm milk first. The baby drank slowly, her eyes half closed in exhaustion. Then Hannah began eating. At first, she took small bites, like someone afraid the food would vanish. Her hands trembled. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she chewed. Dominic said nothing. He just watched. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, then looked up. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." Dominic leaned forward. "Tell me, Hannah, what happened to you? How did you end up like this?" Hannah glanced down at Julia and stroked her forehead gently. Then she began to speak. "Sir, I have no one in this world. My parents died when I was a little girl. I grew up in an orphanage in Ibadan. Life was hard, very hard. When I got older, I did whatever I could to survive. I cleaned houses, washed clothes, cooked, anything." She paused, kissed Julia's forehead. "Then I met Jacob. He was a taxi driver in Lagos, from a neighboring country. He was kind. We became close. We loved each other. After a year, he said we'd marry." Dominic listened closely. The restaurant had gone quiet. "A few months later, I found out I was pregnant. I was scared. But when I told Jacob, he was happy. He said he'd marry me, but he needed to go home and tell his family. First it was tradition, he said." She paused. Her voice cracked. "That was the last time I saw him." Dominic blinked. He leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Hannah nodded slowly. "He said he'd be back in a week, but he never came. His number stopped working. I waited. I cried. I begged his friends, but no one helped me. Or maybe they were lying, I don't know. I ran out of money. I lost the small house I stayed in. No one would hire a pregnant girl. I started sleeping outside. I begged for food. And now, Julia is all I have." She wiped her eyes. Her voice was soft, but steady. Dominic's chest felt heavy. He looked at Julia, now sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms. Then at Hannah, still young, still full of quiet hope. Life had treated her like she didn't matter. He reached into his pocket. Slowly, he pulled out a thick bundle of cash and placed it on the table. "Take this," he said. "It'll help you and your baby for now." Hannah looked at the money, her hands shaking. "Sir, this is too much," she whispered. I can't take all of this." Dominic looked her in the eyes. "Take it," he said again gently. "You need it." Hannah glanced down at Julia, still asleep in her arms. Slowly, she picked up the money and pressed it to her chest. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. "May God bless you." Dominic nodded, offering a small smile. Then he glanced at his wristwatch. His eyes widened. He was late. His important meeting had already started. The foreign guests were likely already at his office. He stood up abruptly. "I have a very important meeting this morning. It'll last for about 3 hours. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card, his name, number, and company printed cleanly across it. He handed it to her. "Call me after 3 hours," he said. "I'll come wherever you are and I'll take you and your baby to a safe place." Hannah accepted the card carefully, holding it like it was made of gold. She opened her mouth to speak, but something stopped her. She didn't have a phone, not even a small one. She glanced at Dominic's face. She wanted to tell him, but the words didn't come. "Thank you, sir," she said instead, nodding. She thought fast. Maybe I can pay someone to help me make the call when the time comes." Dominic gave her one last look. "I'll be waiting for your call." Then he turned and walked out of the restaurant. Hannah sat there in silence, holding Julia with one hand, the card in the other. For the first time in a long time, she had hope. After a while, she stood up. She looked at the card again. It had Dominic's full name, office, and number. "I can't lose this," she thought. She folded it neatly and slid it into a tiny pocket sewn inside Julia's clothes. The baby was still asleep. Hannah touched the pocket gently, making sure it was secure. Then she stepped outside. As she adjusted Julia's blanket, the card slipped out. It fell to the ground, half hidden by a puddle near the door. No one noticed. The rain had stopped. The sun peeked out gently from behind the clouds. Hannah walked away, not knowing the card was gone. She boarded a public bus back to the same spot where Dominic had found her earlier that morning. She passed the small shop near the corner, the one where she had begged for hours. The shop owner wasn't there, but the shade remained. She sat on the edge of the wooden bench, holding Julia tight. "I'll wait here until it's time to call," she thought. "I'll find someone. I'll pay them. I'll call." But now there was no card, no number, nothing. At exactly noon, Dominic stood up from the conference table. The foreign guest had just left. The meeting was a success. The deal was solid. His company was set to grow. He should have been smiling, but he wasn't. His mind was elsewhere. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone. No missed calls. He checked the time again. 5 hours had passed. He sat down slowly and stared at the floor. "Why hasn't she called me?" he whispered. "Did she forget?" He rubbed his fingers together slowly. Maybe she never planned to call," he muttered. "Maybe she's just one of those people who beg for a living." His jaw tightened, but then he remembered. She didn't look like someone pretending. She looked scared. She looked broken. He could still see the tears on her cheeks as she ate, the way she clutched her baby as if shielding her from a cruel world. He sighed deeply. "I told her I'd take her to a safe place, if not for her, then at least for the baby. Why wouldn't she want that?" He stared at his phone again. Still nothing. After a while, he set it down on his desk and returned to his work, but his mind wasn't in it. His heart wasn't at peace. Across the city, Hannah sat quietly in the same spot where he had found her that morning beneath the small shade, holding Julia close. She still believed the card was safe. She still believed help was coming. It was now lunchtime. Dominic stepped into his black SUV. For a moment, he sat still, silent, thoughtful. Then he turned to his driver. "Take me back to that small restaurant, the one we stopped at this morning, where I met the woman and her baby." The driver nodded and started the engine. As the car weaved through the Lagos streets, Dominic stared out the window, scanning every face, every corner. Maybe she's still nearby. Maybe she waited. What if she tried to call but couldn't? What if something happened to her? Questions spun through his mind unanswered. When they arrived, Dominic stepped out quickly. He looked around. Left, right, nothing. No Hannah. No baby. No sign of the fragile hope he had left behind that morning. He walked slowly toward the restaurant door. Then he saw it, lying damp on the ground near the entrance. He bent down. It was the card. His card. The one he had given her. Wet from the earlier rain. Its edges soft. The ink slightly smudged, but still readable. His heart sank. "Did she throw it away?" he whispered. "Or did it fall without her knowing?" He looked around again, just in case. Still nothing. He held the card tightly, then walked inside and sat at the same table where they had shared breakfast. A waitress approached. "Good afternoon, sir. What would you like to eat?" He barely looked at her. "Just rice and chicken," he said quietly. As she left, Dominic leaned back in his chair. He placed the wet card on the table and stared at it, his eyes full of questions. In his mind, two voices argued. She left. She never planned to call. She lost the card. Maybe she's still waiting for you. He didn't know which voice to believe, but he knew one thing. He couldn't stop thinking about that baby, about what she might be going through now. Far away, Hannah sat under the small shade. Julia was still asleep in her arms. Hannah looked tired. Her eyes were red and hollow. She glanced up at the sun. It must be past noon, she thought. It's time. She reached gently into the pocket sewn inside Julia's clothes to pull out the card, but her hand stopped. Her heart dropped. It was empty. She searched again, her fingers trembling. She shook the tiny fabric gently. Nothing. Her mouth open. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no. Where is it?" The card was gone, and with it, her last hope. She checked her wrapper. Nothing. Her hands moved fast, eyes scanning the dusty ground around her feet. Still nothing. Tears welled up. "Oh no, no, no," she cried softly, her voice cracking. She sank back down under the shade, clutching Julia tightly. "This is not happening," she whispered. "God finally sent someone to help me, someone kind, and now I've lost his card." She wiped her face with the corner of her wrapper, but the tears wouldn't stop. Dominic. He said he'd come for us. He said we'd be safe. She saw his eyes in her memory, calm, kind. She remembered the money, the warm food, the way he spoke gently, the promise of help, and now it was gone. She pulled Julia closer. "I'm so sorry, baby. Mommy lost it. I lost the only chance we had." Her lips trembled. Her shoulders shook. The pain in her heart was heavy, unbearable. But then, a small thought broke through the grief. Maybe it dropped inside the bus I entered. Or maybe her eyes lit up slightly. Maybe it fell at the restaurant? The place he took us to eat? She looked up quickly. The bus was gone now. She had no idea what number it was, or how to trace it. But the restaurant? Yes. She remembered the street. She remembered the table. She could find it. She stood up, her eyes still wet but burning with sudden hope. "I must go back," she said under her breath. Maybe the card is still there. Maybe someone found it." She wrapped Julia carefully onto her back, then stepped onto the road, walking fast, her feet aching, but her heart pushing forward. "God, please," she prayed silently. "Please let me find it. Don't let this be the end of our help." Her legs were tired, her body weak, but she kept moving. She waved down a small yellow bus heading toward the area. She climbed in, holding Julia close, eyes glued to the windows. She barely spoke. Every stop made her heart beat faster. Finally, the bus pulled into the familiar stop near the restaurant. Hannah climbed down quickly and looked around. She hurried toward the place. Would the card still be there? Had someone picked it up? Would anyone even remember? Inside the restaurant, Dominic sat quietly, finishing the last bite of his food. His mind was still on the card, on her. He picked it up again, gently wiped the surface with a tissue, and stared at it. Then he let out a long sigh, stood up, and walked toward the door. His driver opened the car door. "Let's go back to the office," Dominic said. As the SUV pulled out from the front of the restaurant, Hannah was just a few steps away. She didn't see him inside the car, and he didn't see her. Seconds later, the vehicle was gone. She reached the front door, breathing hard, her heart racing. She stepped inside, scanning the place quickly. Everything looked the same, but something was missing. She hurried to the table they had shared. It was clean, wiped spotless, no card, no sign. She dropped to her knees, checked under the table, under the chairs. Nothing. She turned to one of the waitresses. "Excuse me, please," she asked, her voice shaking. "Did anyone find a small card here?" The waitress looked at her and shook her head. "No, madam. We cleaned everything. Nothing like that." Hannah's face fell. She stepped outside slowly, her arms wrapped tightly around Julia, who had started to cry. Hannah tried to calm her, but her own tears were falling too. Her only chance was gone, and she had no idea how close she had just come. She turned and walked away slowly, still hurting, still hoping, never knowing that the man she was searching for had just left only seconds before. That night, Hannah sat on the cold cement floor of the unfinished building. There were no windows, just broken walls and open space. The wind blew through like a ghost. She spread out some old clothes on the floor and laid Julia down gently. The baby was already asleep, her tiny hand resting peacefully on Hannah's arm. Hannah sat beside her, back against the rough wall, staring up into the ceiling, or what was left of it, her eyes brimming with tears. She whispered, "God, I don't want my child to grow up like this. Please, help us." Her thoughts drifted to Dominic, his face, his kindness, his soft eyes, as he looked at her and her baby. Then came the sting of memory, the card, lust. She pressed her hands to her chest and sighed deeply. "Maybe I'll never see him again," she murmured. But before closing her eyes, Hannah made a decision, a quiet, steady, unshakable decision. "I will go back to the same spot, the same place he saw me. Maybe, just maybe, he might pass there again." She didn't sleep much that night. The wind was cold. Mosquitoes bit her bare arms. Julia cried in her sleep. Still, Hannah held on. By early morning, she was already awake. She cleaned Julia with water from a small plastic bowl, changed her clothes, and gently brushed her tiny curls. She smiled at her daughter. "We will be okay, I promise." Hannah wasn't hungry that morning. Dominic had given her enough money to feed them for more than a week, but today was not about food. Today was about hope. She tied Julia securely to her back and stepped onto the dusty road. She didn't beg. She didn't speak. She just walked to the exact spot where Dominic had first seen her and stood still, watching, waiting, hoping. Would he pass that way again? She didn't know, but she was ready to wait. As long as it would take. That same morning, in a much different part of the city, laughter echoed through Dominic's house. The day was special. His younger brother Silam was finally coming back. After 17 long years in Atlanta, Silam was returning home. Dominic had been waiting for this day. He didn't go to the office. He had planned everything himself. Early that morning, he called for his driver. "Please go to the airport," he said. "My brother's flight lands soon. Make sure you're on time." "Yes, sir," the driver replied, hurrying off. Dominic walked around the house with a joyful smile. In the kitchen, he gave the chef instructions. Fried rice, jollof, grilled chicken, goat meat, and pounded yam. "Don't forget the pounded yam, that's his favorite." The chef smiled. "Don't worry, sir. Everything will be ready before he arrives." Then Dominic picked up his phone and called 3 of his closest friends. "Silam is arriving today. Come over. Let's welcome him properly." They all agreed. Music played softly in the background. The house was alive with joy. Dominic stood at the balcony and looked out, hands in his pockets, sunlight on his face. "This is a good day," he whispered. But far away, down in the heart of the city, Hannah was still standing by the road, Julia tied tightly to her back. Her eyes were tired, but her hope still strong. She watched every black SUV that passed. Every shiny car made her heart skip a beat. But today, the driver had taken Dominic's newest red SUV. She didn't know. She had no idea that the man she was praying to see again wasn't coming out that day. Not even close. Still, Hannah stood at the roadside, the sun now much higher in the sky, baby Julia tied to her back, her eyes scanning every passing car. "God," she whispered, "please, don't forget me." She waited and hoped and prayed. Meanwhile, at the airport, Dominic's driver stood by the pickup area, holding a white paper sign that read, "Salem, soon." A tall man with a warm smile pushed a trolley full of luggage toward him. "You must be Dominic's driver," he said. "Yes, sir," the driver replied, taking the trolley and placing it into the car. As they drove out of the airport, Salem rolled down the window and looked out at the busy streets. "This place has really changed," he said, taking in the bustling city. The driver smiled. "Yes, sir. A lot has changed since you left." But as they rolled deeper into the city, traffic began to slow them down. Cars everywhere. Honking filled the air. Buses, tricycles, motorcycles, trucks, all squeezed into tight lanes. The driver sighed. "Ah, this traffic again." Salem leaned back and laughed. "How do you people cope with this chaos?" "We just have to, sir," the driver chuckled. "This is Lagos, the most populous city in Africa." They both laughed, but then something changed. The car slowed again. The driver looked ahead, and his smile disappeared. There, by the roadside, a young woman standing quietly, baby tied to her back. She looked exhausted, but he recognized her instantly. The same woman, the one Dominic took to the restaurant, the one he had gone back to find, the one who fed her baby before feeding herself. The driver's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Something twisted in his chest. Salem noticed. "Is something wrong?" he asked. The driver shook his head quickly. "No, sir. Just traffic." But his eyes stayed on the rearview mirror. His heart beat faster. Should I stop? Should I call my boss? What if she leaves? He wasn't sure. So he kept driving. But the image of that woman stayed in his mirror and in his heart. 19 minutes later, the black SUV pulled into Dominic's large, flower-lined mansion. As the car came to a halt, Salem stepped out and looked around, impressed. The house was beautiful, every inch neat and polished. Suddenly, the front door opened. Dominic appeared, arms wide open. "Salem, brother!" Salem laughed as they embraced tightly. "You look good," Dominic said, holding his brother's shoulders. "And you? Look richer?" Salem teased. They both laughed. Soon, Dominic's closest friends stepped out, welcoming Salem warmly with handshakes and smiles. Music played in the background, drinks were served, and the celebration began. But one man didn't smile. The driver. He stood beside the car, quiet, anxious. His eyes kept darting toward Dominic. He knew he had to speak. Now, before it was too late, as everyone walked into the mansion, the driver followed quietly. He didn't say a word, not yet. But the weight in his chest kept growing. He had seen something, someone. And deep inside, he knew that woman mattered, and Dominic needed to know. Dominic walked toward the kitchen to check on the food. Inside, the chef was busy slicing meat, seasoning sauces, frying noisily. But behind Dominic, the driver followed quickly and quietly. "Excuse me, sir," he said in a low voice. Dominic turned, eyebrows raised. "Yes, what is it?" The driver took a breath. "Sir, I saw her." Dominic's expression changed. "Who?" "The woman from yesterday, the one with the baby." Dominic stood still. "She was standing at the same spot where you first met her." For a moment, silence. Dominic's eyes dropped to the floor. He seemed to drift somewhere far away. The rain came back to him, her soaking clothes, her bare feet, the way she wrapped her baby tightly in her only dry cloth. He heard her voice again. "My baby didn't eat last night." He clenched his jaw. "She threw my card away," he said, but then paused. Or maybe not. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she didn't throw it away at all. Maybe fate had something else in mind. He looked up at the driver. "Go back, now. If she's still there, ask her why she didn't call me. If what she says makes sense, if her face shows she truly wants help, bring her to me." The driver nodded sharply. "Yes, sir." He turned, walked fast through the door, and moments later, the red SUV pulled out of the compound. Back at the roadside, Hannah was still there. Sweat covered her neck. Baby Julia slept quietly on her back, her tiny head damp from the heat. Hannah's legs were tired. Her hope was thinning. She looked down the road again. Still, nothing. "It's past noon," she said softly. "If he was going to work, he'd have passed by now." She sighed. "Maybe he didn't go today. Or maybe he took another route." Looking up at the sun, she whispered, "Let's find some shade, my baby." She turned to leave. Then, "Madam," a man's voice behind her. She stopped. Froze. She turned. A red SUV had pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. Dominique's driver. "Wait," he said gently, stepping out of the car. Hannah's eyes widened. Her heart skipped. She held Julia tighter as she took a cautious step forward. Their eyes met, and tears immediately welled up in hers. She didn't sob, but her face said it all. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, voice shaking. "I lost the card he gave me. I looked everywhere. I even went back to the restaurant." The driver looked at her tired, sunburned, baby clutched, close like treasure. He didn't need to ask any more questions. This woman wasn't lying. This woman had suffered. "Please follow me," he said softly. Hannah nodded. He opened the back door. She climbed in with Julia, quiet but full of emotions. As the car moved through traffic, Hannah looked out the window, her fingers brushing Julia's damp hair. She didn't know where they were going. She didn't know what to expect, but she whispered softly, almost breathlessly, "Thank you, God. Thank you." The red SUV rolled into Dominic's mansion and parked by the carport. The driver stepped out and gently opened the back door. Hannah stepped out slowly, holding Julia close to her chest. Her heart beat fast. Her future waited just behind that front door. Hannah's heart beat faster. She looked up at the large house, the tall pillars, the shining windows, the perfectly trimmed flowers. It felt like she was dreaming. Everything looked beautiful. The driver gave her a soft smile. "Come with me." Quietly, she followed him. As they entered the house, she heard laughter coming from the sitting room. Dominic was there seated with his brother Salem and a few other guests, deep in conversation. They were laughing. But the moment Dominic looked up and saw her, his smile faded. He stood slowly. Hannah stepped forward, holding Julia close. Her knees went weak, and she dropped to the floor in respect. But Dominic rushed toward her and gently grabbed her arms. "No, please," he said softly. "Don't do that." She stood up, trembling. The room went silent. Every face turned toward them, full of confusion, full of questions. But no one said a word. Dominic didn't offer any explanation. He only looked at her and said, "Come with me." He led her away from the crowd and down the hallway, then gently opened the door to a guest room. It was bright, clean, fresh bedsheets, a soft fragrance in the air. "Please," he said gently, "take a proper bath. You and your baby. You can rest here." Hannah nodded slowly, still glancing around as if unsure whether this was real. Dominic turned and walked straight to the kitchen. He found the chef. "There's a woman in the guest room," he said firmly. "Make sure she eats well. No delay." "Yes, sir," the chef replied. That evening, the guests were gone. Dominic sat in the living room with Salem and Hannah. She looked different now, clean, fresh clothes, her hair combed by one of the maids. Julia was asleep in her arms. Dominic turned to her. "You said you lost the card," he asked softly. Hannah nodded. "Yes, sir. I looked everywhere. I even went back to the restaurant." She paused, then added quietly, "My phone. It got bad before I gave birth. I haven't had a phone since." Salem listened quietly. Dominic had already told him part of the story. Now, seeing her like this quiet, gentle, protective Salem felt something deep stir inside him. He looked at the sleeping baby, then at Dominic. Dominic leaned forward. "I can't change your past," he said, "but I can help your future." Hannah blinked, stunned. Dominic continued, "Think carefully. Is there any business you'd like to do? Something you're good at? Or something you'd like to learn? Tell me, and I'll help you set it up." Hannah stared at him, speechless. Then he added, "You'll stay here for now until I find you a place of your own." Tears rolled down her cheeks. This time, she didn't hide them. She looked at Julia, then at Dominic. "Thank you," she whispered. Salem smiled quietly, eyes still on her. Dominic only nodded, but inside, he knew. He had just made a choice that would change this woman's life forever. A few days later, Dominic stepped into the guest room with a smile. "Get ready," he said. "Out?" Hannah asked, surprised. Dominic nodded. "Yes. You and Julia need something important." Soon they were in the car. Dominic didn't say much. Hannah held Julia close, looking out the window, her thoughts racing. She still couldn't believe all this was real. They arrived at a big building. Dominic led them into the clothing shop. "Pick anything you like," he said. Hannah froze. "Sir, what do you mean?" "I mean it," Dominic smiled. "You and Julia, you both deserve it." At first, Hannah was shy. She touched a few dresses, then quickly dropped them, unsure. But Dominic encouraged her. Soon, she picked a few beautiful outfits for herself. Soft fabrics, calm colors, the kind she had never imagined owning. She also found cozy baby clothes for Julia. When they were done, the cashier carefully packed everything. Dominic paid for it all. Hannah's eyes were bright with joy. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. "Thank you so much." But Dominic wasn't finished. They stepped into a nearby phone store. He asked the seller to bring a new phone, something reliable and easy to use. Then they went to a telecom center. Dominic helped her retrieve her old number. Hannah held the phone like it was made of gold. "God bless you, sir," she said, voice shaking. "I don't even know what to say." Dominic simply smiled. "You don't have to say anything." When they returned to the mansion, Salem was already in the living room, waiting. As they stepped inside, he stood. "Dominic," he said, "there's a place I want you to go with me, and I'd like Hannah to come along." Dominic glanced at Hannah. She nodded quietly. They all got into the car. Nobody said much during the ride. Hannah looked down at Julia, sleeping peacefully in her arms, and whispered a silent prayer. After some time, the car pulled up in front of a tall apartment building. Salem asked the driver to park, and they all stepped out. Dominic looked around. "Where are we?" Salem smiled slightly. "Just follow me." They entered the compound and climbed a short flight of stairs. Outside one of the apartments, Salem stopped. He turned to Hannah. "When I heard your story," he began softly, "it reminded me of our mother." Hannah looked at him, unsure where he was going. Salem's voice lowered. She was a single mother. She raised Dominic and me all alone. He paused. "I remember her crying at night. I'd see her when I woke up, sitting by the window, but we were too young. We couldn't help her." Hannah's eyes welled with tears. Her arms tightened around Julia. "She died before we could give her the life she deserved," Salem continued. "Before we made money, before we could say thank you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small key. "This apartment, it's yours." Hannah's legs gave way. She dropped to her knees and sobbed loudly. "Oh God," she cried, "what did I do to deserve this kindness?" Dominic stood silently, stunned. He had wanted to help Hannah, but Salem had taken it even further. He stepped forward and embraced his brother tightly. "I'm proud of the man you've become," Dominic said, his voice thick. "I just wish Mommy was here to see this." Salem held his brother's hand and gave a soft smile. Then he turned back to Hannah. "I've also made arrangements to open a small supermarket in your name," he said. "You won't manage it alone at first. We'll hire someone to help, but little by little, you'll learn, and it'll be yours." Hannah cried even harder. She couldn't speak, but in her heart, she knew her life would never be the same again. Weeks passed quietly. Hannah's life had changed in ways she once only dreamed of. She now had a clean home to sleep in, food to eat, and a supermarket that bore her name. The shelves were always stocked, and customers came in daily. She no longer begged on the streets with baby Julia tied to her back. One warm afternoon, Hannah sat in her small office inside the supermarket, writing down sales and balancing the books. Julia lay sleeping peacefully in a crib beside her. Suddenly, her phone rang. A strange number. Unknown. She hesitated. Something told her to answer. She pressed the green button. "Hello, is this Hannah?" a soft woman's voice asked. It carried a deep sadness. "Yes, this is Hannah," she replied slowly. "I'm calling from a nearby country," the voice continued. "My name is Evelyn. I'm Jacob's cousin." At the sound of that name, Hannah froze. Her eyes welled with tears. She hadn't heard Jacob's name in so long. "I've been trying this number for over a year," Evelyn said. "It was always off, but today I finally got through." Hannah held her breath. "My cousin Jacob. He came back home the same day he left you," Evelyn explained gently. "There was an accident, a terrible one. He never made it." Hannah gripped her chest. Her heart felt like it stopped. "He was in a coma for 4 months," Evelyn continued. "He never woke up. He passed away quietly." Silence filled the line. Hannah couldn't speak. "I saw the messages you sent him," Evelyn added softly. "I saw the love. I knew he was serious about you." Hannah wiped her tears. Her voice trembled, but she found the strength to answer. "Yes, there's a child," she whispered. "Her name is Julia. She's his daughter." Evelyn gasped gently. "Jacob's mother is still alive, very old now. She cries every day. She thought Jacob left this world without leaving anything behind, but now there's hope." Hannah breathed deeply, her voice steadier. "Don't worry," she said. "I'll make arrangements. Julia must meet her grandmother. I'll do everything I can to make it happen." On the other end, Evelyn began to cry. "Thank you," she whispered. After the call ended, Hannah sat still. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not of pain, but of peace. For so long she had lived with questions, with silence, with heartbreak. But now she knew the truth. Jacob didn't abandon her. He had been fighting for his life and lost. She finally had closure, and her daughter Julia would grow up knowing where she came from. A few days later, Dominic and Salem visited the supermarket. They saw Hannah smiling not just with her face, but from deep within her soul. Dominic placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're strong," he said. And she was. Life had tried to break her, but she rose again, not with hate, not with anger, but with hope. And with that, a new chapter began for Hannah and her daughter Julia. Real wealth isn't money. It's how we treat people who can't pay us back. We rise by lifting others. And even when life seems unfair, don't give up. Sometimes the help you need is already watching, ready to show up when you least expect it. Never judge anyone by what they're going through. Everyone has a story. And with just one act of kindness, you can become someone's turning point. Now tell me, what did you learn from Hannah's story? Was there a moment that made you cry or smile? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read your thoughts. A brand new story is coming soon. Deep, emotional, and full of unexpected twists. So don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a moment. If this story touched you, please like, share, and let someone else be inspired too. Thank you for watching. I truly appreciate you. See you in the next one. Tina.